viewers, let's track the news that's coming in from Australia. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has ordered a review into the police and intelligence services, where his government would try to examine whether or not these services are properly equipped in terms of structure and arrangements to ensure complete safety to its citizens. This comes after the Bondi Beach brutal mass shooting that happened last week on December 14 during the Hanukkah celebrations. A father-son duo, allegedly inspired by the Islamic State ideology, carried out the shooting, killing 15 people and wounding dozens others. According to official reports, one of the shooters, who was the son, identified as 24-year-old Naveed, was investigated back in 2019 over radicalization charges, but was released shortly as the authorities claimed he did not pose a threat. His father, 50-year-old Sajid Akram, was the other shooter. He was also questioned by the intelligence service at the time. Later, he still managed to obtain a gun license, which allowed him to own 6 rifles. The Australian Prime Minister has raised alarms over these security lapses in the country's intelligence services. Meanwhile, residents of Sydney gathered earlier today to collectively commemorate the tragic incident, lighting candles and marking a day of reflection to honor the people who lost their lives last Sunday. All right, I now request Sudhakarji to join us back into the discussion here. Major General, you would recall that yesterday only we were having this discussion where I asked you about a possible lack of intel, and then this update coming in from Australia where Anthony has, Albanese has ordered for a review of the intel and police force. Would you say that Australia, which is a developed nation with a population of only 20 million, or is it 20 million? Yeah, about 20 million, would lack manpower for its intelligence and police force?
Yeah, Kriti, much against the orientation of your question, I would say this is a very mature step, responsible step taken by the Prime Minister of Australia, in my opinion. Why am I saying this is that every nation which goes through a thing like a carnage, as it happened in Bondi, iconic beach, would do well. You know, you try to root out the cause of the problem. When you try to root out the cause of the problem, then because he's addressing the disease, not the symptom. So when you address the disease, a holistic kind of approach has to be adopted. When a holistic kind of approach is to be adopted, then one needs to take a long-term measure. And that long-term measure, I'm glad, because in such kind of situation, whenever it crops up, it can happen anyway. First thing to do is to contain the situation. Second thing to do is to counter it effectively and neutralize. And third is to have a long-term measure to contest it in a persistent manner, so that you prevent a recurrence of these kind of things in future. Keeping this as the paradigm of guideline, I think the Prime Minister of Australia is on the right lines. He's taking the right kind of step. It's a very mature and responsible step, wherein he's not only looking at the current practices, but also looking at the existing structure and the deficiencies therein. And he is taking steps to identify these deficiencies and address them in a holistic manner, so to plug the gap. So if it does that, not that 100% surety will be there to prevent recurrence, because the terrorism is such an act. If you devise something, evolve something today, some strategy, they will actually, circumvent that particular path or approach of the government and start coming up with something new. So it has to be a dynamic process, it has to be a ever-evolving process, and it must be a continuous process of revisiting the strategy which they are adopting now. It is not going to come into existence or come into effect overnight. It will take some time. But in the meantime, it will do good to Australian government if they also adopt some kind of measures to contain and counter. When I say contain, what it means is there are only 2 terrorists who have come to notice. There are only few countries which have been identified, dots have been joined. Maybe, for all you know, the name of ISIS itself should actually, throw up red herring. It is a transcontinental kind of a caliphate in the emergence. It is likely to grow in times ahead. Therefore, there is a requirement to go in for the global effort, and not alone Australia will be able to address it in a comprehensive manner. My only recommendation, very strong recommendation, is along with Australia, It's about time the global order also sits down, joins the head, finds a common strategy to counter it effectively and stop this menace in the world order. Back to you, Kriti.
So you'd say that it's better late than never because, earlier as well, the son who was a shooter was held for anti-radicalization, for being radicalized. He was held in 2019 and his father was quizzed back then also. And even after that, he's gone on to procure 6 rifles. So clearly, would you say then that the gun laws also are riddled with several loopholes?
Absolutely. You see, in United Nations, with your journalistic career, you would have come across, you see, there are many agreements which have been signed by the members of United Nations. One of the agreements is to prevent smooth flow of illegal lethal weapon systems. I'm forgetting the acronym. It is already in place. It came into existence sometime in 2005, took shape in 2015. It's already being applied across the board, but in a selective manner, in fits and starts. So therefore, there is a requirement to make it coherent and consistent. So flow of illegal weapons. If they have spotted 6 weapons, where did they come from? So Australia, as on today, is one of the best countries which has got very stringent laws as far as the gun culture is concerned. Despite that, how did these 6 weapons? If 6 weapons have come, I'm very sure there are 600 more in hiding at different places. Therefore, the ecosystem has to be busted by the security apparatus. Only
right.
then
Okay.
it requires a kind of a sustained effort by the government of Australia to actually bring it to some kind of a viable terminal end. Otherwise, this will keep recurring time and again.
All right. Thank you very much once again, Major General, for joining me in this discussion. And it's a pleasure to have you. And with that, viewers, we're now going to move on to some news from North Korea.